November 3rd, 1926. Ishpeming, Michigan, 4 miles west of town, at the Barnes-Hecker mine. At 8 in the morning, Mine Captain William Tippett leads a small party underground for a routine safety inspection. With him is William E. Hill, the Marquette County mine inspector, re-elected to his office only the day before. It will be his first inspection since winning, and his last. The Barnes-Hecker is an iron ore mine owned by the Cleveland Cliffs Iron Company, sunk over 1,000 feet deep and worked across 3 main levels. It sits close to an older, worked-out mine called the Michigan, separated from it by a wall of rock and clay that has held back groundwater for years. Nobody underground that morning knows how thin that wall has become or how close the crew is about to come to breaking through it. By 11:25, the shift is preparing to head up for lunch. Most of the men are gathered on the 3rd level, going about the last routine tasks of the morning. Then, without warning, the ground gives way. A wall separating the active mine from old flooded workings collapses. Mud, sand, and water begin pouring into the shaft with tremendous force, flooding downward through the levels below and rushing to fill every open space it can reach. Within minutes, the inrush chokes the main shaft to within 180 feet of the surface, a wall of debris and water, sealing off the levels where dozens of men had been working only moments before. One man is on the 3rd level when the collapse begins, Wilfred Wills. Somehow, in the chaos, he reaches a vertical escape ladder and begins to climb. He climbs 800 feet, straight up, ahead of water and debris that could have caught him at any point along the way, until he reaches safety. He is the only man on that shift to make it out alive. Above ground, word spreads through Ishpeming that afternoon with the force of a physical blow. 50 men are trapped below, along with the county's own mine inspector, on the first working day of his new term. At the nearby Morris mine, Superintendent Charles Stakel had been scheduled to inspect the Barnes-Hecker that same morning. His wife needed the car that day, so instead he walked to the closer Morris mine. At 11:30, a mine captain runs to find him with the news. Stakel rushes to the Barnes-Hecker to find a flooded shaft and an entire shift, many of them his friends, somewhere beneath the mud and water. For 4 agonizing hours, rescuers can do almost nothing but wait and plan. Finally, Stakel and a small group of supervisors use an escape tunnel connecting to the Morris mine, working their way down by electric motor as far as the tracks allow. Then the tunnel gives out beneath them into waist-deep mud and sand. They press forward on foot into the dark. What they find first are the bodies of William Tippett, the mine captain, and William Hill, the inspector who had been underground for less than 4 hours on his first day back in office. A 3rd body is recovered nearby, too covered in mud to identify. It will later be confirmed as Thomas Kirby. 7 more bodies are eventually recovered, washed down a connecting raise into the neighboring Morris mine, carried there by the same flood that killed them. In total, only 10 of the 51 men lost that day are ever brought to the surface. The other 41 remain exactly where the collapse left them, sealed beneath the flooded workings of a mine that will never reopen. The final list of the dead runs to 51 names. Fathers and sons lost together. Brothers lost together. Many of the names are Finnish, reflecting the immigrant communities that had built these mining towns from nothing. 42 of the men leave behind wives. Between them, the dead leave 132 children without fathers. In 1926, Michigan law does not require Cleveland Cliffs to pay liability damages to the families of the men it employed. There is no legal obligation forcing the company's hand. Even so, the company voluntarily pays double the standard workers' compensation to the widows and children left behind, an acknowledgement, however incomplete, of what the disaster had taken from an entire community at once. Wilfred Wills, the sole survivor, lives for another 46 years after climbing that ladder. For the rest of his life, he carries what would today be recognized as post-traumatic stress, the weight of having been the only man to walk back out of a mine that swallowed 50 of his co-workers in a matter of minutes. He rarely speaks in detail about what he saw underground that morning, or about the sound the water made as it came for him. The Barnes-Hecker mine never reopens. The shaft that took 51 lives is eventually sealed, left as it stood on the day of the collapse, an underground tomb that the surrounding forest slowly reclaims above. In 1971, 45 years after the disaster, a memorial stone is placed near the town of Negaunee, carrying the names of the 51 men who died. A historical marker is added later, standing today at Michigan's Iron Industry Museum, a permanent record of a single morning that remains, even a century on, the worst industrial disaster in the history of the state. 41 men are still down there. No recovery effort was ever attempted for the bodies the flood claimed and never released. The mine that killed them is, in the most literal sense, also their grave, 1,000 feet beneath a Michigan forest that has long since grown back over the site, holding a silence that has now lasted longer than most of the men buried within it ever got to live.